not all Caitlin Clarks are the same.
Caitlin Clark, city planner.
Just like not all internet providers are the same. Don't settle. Get real deal speed, reliability, and power with Xfinity.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inquirer live at Gameday Central, Phillies vs. Mets in London, sponsored by Xfinity. I'm Alex Coffey, Phillies reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'm joined by my fellow Phillies writer and Inquirer MLB reporter Scott Lauber, who is live in London to cover the Phillies and Mets over the next 2 days across the pond.
Cheers, Alex. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'll spare you my my English accent. It's not very good. But yeah, everything's great here. The Phillies are about an hour away from starting their 2-game series against the Mets, and it's been a enjoyable first couple of days here in London. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to start with the actual ballpark/stadium. I don't know exactly what you want to call it itself, because it seems like the dimensions are pretty crazy. It's going to be a bandbox in there. What is it actually like in person?
So this is the third time that MLB has come to London and played a series in London Stadium. They did it in 2019 when the Yankees and Red Sox came over. They did it in 2023 last year when the Cubs and Cardinals came over. And in both of those series, there were a ton of runs scored. It definitely played small. It definitely played like a bandbox. They have tweaked the dimensions a little bit, but let me tell you, my first impression walking in here yesterday was they literally wedged a baseball field into a soccer stadium. It looks pretty cool, I got to tell you. I'm sure you've seen the pictures and some of the video that's come over. But the dimensions, so the listed dimensions are 330 down each line, 378, I believe, in the alleys, and only 392 in center field. Yeah. So center field is short. But the alleys, they say, are pretty normal-ish. The ball flew pretty well yesterday in batting practice and again today. So I would be surprised if it's not a hitter's paradise once again. But, I think Kyle Schwarber's eyes lit up a little bit when he saw the dimensions of this place. It's definitely, I think, going to favor the hitters, but we'll see. The other thing to note is the turf. Okay, so it's a spongy, bouncy turf. In the outfield, especially. The infield is dirt, but it's different from anything the Phillies see pretty much the whole rest of the year. It's Bryson Stott told me yesterday it's most comparable to Tampa Bay in the Trop. So that's something to watch for, just what kind of hops the balls take and how the infielders and outfielders react when they get balls on the ground. Yeah,
so is the thought that the ball could kind of speed up on them or something, or just that it could take some weird hops?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know if they are either, because they don't usually do this. So I think a little bit of both maybe. And I know the outfielders are cognizant of that when they feel the ball on the ground out there. And it's funny. I know we'll talk about the starting pitchers in this series: Ranger Suarez tonight, Taijuan Walker tomorrow. Taijuan Walker said earlier today that his plan is to throw as many splitters as possible, keep the ball on the ground, and not let it get in the air. And so if he has his way, he's going to want to test this turf tomorrow and get a lot of ground balls.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how because I know Bobby Dickerson is so meticulous with their preparation, but how do you prepare for something like that? You really can't.
You can't. And like I said, they went out yesterday and did a little work on that turf, and it's pretty unique. They won't play on it on anything like it again until they play the Rays in Tampa next year at the Trop. So I guess that's something they can draw on. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, they'll be prepared for that series in Tampa Bay, so that's a good thing for them. Have you seen a lot of Phillies fans in London so far?
I have seen a ton of Phillies fans. So first of all, I flew on Wednesday night, and the flight was full of Phillies fans. I mean, literally, like at the gate in the airport, it was just everyone had. I was the only person, I think, who was not wearing a Philly shirt. I kind of stuck out in that way. I think people were wondering, like, what's this guy all about? Like, why is he going to London and not wearing his red? So it was definitely. And then, it's funny because London's huge. I don't know if you've been here. It's my second. Well, it's technically my third trip, but really, my first was one day, so I don't count it. I was here on vacation with my family in December.
Mhm.
It's an enormous city. It's huge. It's like the only thing I can compare it to is New York in the U.S. in terms of you can get on the subway and ride and still be in the city,
Yeah.
and that's unique. It's an enormous city, and I walked around the last 2 days in sort of central London, seeing a lot of the sights and doing a lot of the touristy stuff, and it is amazing to me how many Phillies fans in particular,
Yeah.
Mets fans too, but the Phillies fans in particular I've seen around town. They're
Yeah.
everywhere. So, I don't know if we'll get much more than an estimate over the next 2 days of what the breakdown of the crowd is like,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be very, very, very Phillies partisan.
Yeah,
For
I was
sure.
gonna say it's probably a tough sell to convince a fan to travel internationally when your team is below 500. So
Well, hopefully, Mets fans decided to make this trip before they knew that.
yeah, that's
and,
true.
and didn't do it but yeah, it's interesting. So I have talked to some people who came from New York, and they said they had a similar experience at the airport. Lots of Mets fans. So we will see. It's interesting too that they have set up kind of on the outskirts of the stadium. They've set up zones, like a Phillies zone and a Mets
Oh, wow.
zone. And
Okay.
there are if you're in the Philly zone, you can get your cheesesteak. If you're in the Met zone, you can get your pastrami sandwich. They've definitely tried to make people feel comfortable and at home here,
Yeah.
even though I think most people who are here want the London experience,
Yeah.
right? Like, I would want fish and chips at the ballpark if I could. So, it's kind of funny to see how they've tried to make this as much of an home atmosphere as possible while doing it 3,600 miles from home.
Yeah. Yeah. What have the players said? You've had the chance to talk to a few of them so far.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. I think you have some who have really tried to go out and experience the city. One of the neat things about this is that they had 2 days off, more or less. I mean, they had a workout here yesterday that lasted for a short period of time, and the Phillies went first. So they went around lunchtime, and then they had the rest of their day free. They had all day Thursday free after they landed at about 10 a.m. And the advice that you get when you travel across the Atlantic is don't go to sleep when you land, because you fly
Yeah.
overnight basically, and so if you go to sleep, you're going to end up not being able to sleep that night.
Yeah.
So I know the players were told, try not to sleep, and I think a lot of them adhered to that, and were able to kind of explore the city on Thursday. Bryson Stott has been here before, so he played tour guide for a lot of players, including Kyle Schwarber, who has never been here. There's a funny video, if you've seen it, of Schwarber looking at photos of London landmarks and like fairly common London landmarks like Buckingham Palace, and not having much of a clue what he was looking at. So Thursday, Bryson Stott took Schwarber around, and they went to see the changing of the guard.
Wow.
They went to see Big Ben, and they saw the London Eye, all the things that any of us would do if we were coming to London, especially for the first time. I mean, I did almost all of those things on Thursday myself. And so you've got that group, the group that went out and did that. Then you've got another group like Bryce Harper, who he's a foodie. And so the first thing he did was he went to Borough Market, which was actually the first thing I did as well when I got here on Thursday. It was lunchtime. And if you've never been there, it's like incredible, huge fresh food market.
Kind of like Reading.
Kind of, but
Bigger,
bigger, and more vendors. There are over 100 vendors. My wife lived here for a little while, a long time ago before we knew each other. And so she loves there's this grilled cheese place in Borough Market. So I had to go to that. And yeah, I mean, so Bryce Harper did that. You had some guys who did that. The team had an event at Tower of London on Thursday night. And then, after their workout yesterday, you'll appreciate this, I think. It was one of the weirdest things. I'm in the clubhouse, and they have a nice big clubhouse here. And, guys are getting ready to go out into the city after their workout. And, guys are talking to one another about, hey, are you taking the tube? Are you doing this? And you don't hear that anywhere else you go. I mean, this, you go to New York and you don't hear guys talking about hey, you going to get on the 7 train? So I do think that there's a large group of them who are trying to experience the city, a city that either they've never been to or don't think they'll ever get back to. And then you have some who are like Ranger Suarez, who says he slept all day. I think he was serious. With him, you're never sure. So he said he slept all day on Thursday, and so I mean, some guys are more into it than others.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting in talking to Bryce Harper yesterday, he sort of pushed back on the idea that this is a business trip, and he said no, it's not really a business trip. He said we're here to enjoy an experience that we don't get to have, that the fans certainly don't get to have, and we're here to maybe make some new fans, some new baseball fans. And I kind of think it's a neat way to look at things, and different from a usual road trip for sure.
Yeah. I thought, I mean, as you know, you've covered him longer than I have, but it seems like he always really thinks through what he's going to say before he says it, and has a lot of purpose behind his words. And him mentioning the 2028 Olympics and allowing MLB players to play felt very pointed.
Yeah, it was teed up for him, right? Because we're all talking about, baseball and spreading the gospel of baseball, so to speak. And, Bryce is very pro-Olympics. He wants baseball back in the Olympics, which will happen in 2028 in Los Angeles. And he wants MLB to let players be able to go play, which means stopping the season for a few weeks, kind of like they do in the NHL. And, he definitely took the opportunity yesterday to lobby for that again. And I don't blame him, because I think that would be really, really cool and a unique thing to see.
Yeah, definitely. So let's hone in on a few specific players. And I figured first I would ask you if there's any injury update on Trey Turner or Brandon Marsh.
There is. So Trey Turner is here with the team. He has gone through workouts the last couple of days. He did his ground balls yesterday. He took batting practice. They took him today. They took him outside of London Stadium. There's like an adjacent soccer field, which has actual grass.
Wow.
And he was able to do some running, because I don't think they wanted him to run on that turf. Yeah. So they actually were able to do some running on grass on a soccer field adjacent to here. And he'll go to Boston with the team and continue his work there. There's still no timeline for when he's going to come back. However, it does not sound like he's going to go on a rehab assignment before he comes back. Okay. He has the option, based on his service time, he has the option of declining a rehab assignment. And Rob Thompson said today that he has a hunch that Trey would likely decline if the Phillies asked him to make one. So it sounds like whenever he's ready, whether that's this weekend in Baltimore, once they get home, they're not outlining the time, but once he gets ready, it will be straight to the major leagues. And Brandon Marsh and Cody Clemens are not here. Unfortunately, the timing of their injuries was such that the Phillies didn't bring them along. And the reason was simple. There was no activity here on Thursday, baseball activities, and they went through a very brief workout Friday. So they wanted Marsh and Clemens in particular at the early stage of their rehabs to be able to do baseball activities the last 2 days. Yeah. So Brandon Marsh has been in Lehigh Valley, apparently going through some baseball activities there. And he will go to Reading early next week once Lehigh goes on the road, and continue either just ramping up or going out on a brief rehab assignment before he comes back. So him not being here, it's impossible, to know how he's doing, how he's feeling. But the fact that he's in Lehigh doing baseball activities would indicate that that it's a smooth recovery so far.
Yeah. Well, Thompson was asked a little while ago about the severity of Marsh's strain and whether it was anything like Trey Turner's strain. And he really emphasized that it was mild, that it wasn't as severe, So I guess just take it with a grain of salt. Things can change, but it seems like he's been progressing.
Yeah, very mild, right? Was the sort of the party line the other day. So, it's 10-day minimum, right, on the IL. So, if it's 10 days or 2 weeks, that seems like kind of a similar timeline to what they were looking at initially. I don't get the sense that that's changed. Yeah,
definitely. And moving on to the starters, I figured that would be a natural place to start if we're talking about specific guys. Ranger Suarez, the deep sleeper, is starting tonight in your neck of the woods. The last time we saw him, he was hit in the thumb with an 106-mile-an-hour comebacker. He's had a remarkable recovery. What do you think that they're expecting from him tonight? Do you think they'll have him on any sort of a pitch count, given like the length of his start last time?
So I can confirm he's awake, because I've seen him today. So he woke up, which is a good thing. And Yeah, no, I mean, look, I would imagine that he'll be shortened a little bit because he only pitched, 2 innings on June 1st when he got hit.
Yeah.
What's today's date?
June 8th.
Today's the 8th. So it's been a little over a week and he's pitched 2 innings. So I'd assume they'd shorten him a little bit. But Rob Thompson said yesterday he doesn't think it's going to be real restrictive. He thinks it'll be close to a normal start. What's interesting about this start for Ranger Suarez, aside from the fact that it's taking place in London, is that it's taking place in a soccer stadium. And he is, as I think he's a huge soccer fan. He grew up playing soccer. He watches it all the time. It's on in the clubhouse. A lot of the reason why it's on in the clubhouse is because of him. And I asked him yesterday, if he's ever been to a Premier League stadium before, and B, does he appreciate pitching here on maybe a different level from some other people who, cool, it's a soccer stadium, right? And he said no, he'd never been to a he said walking in here yesterday was the first time he'd ever been inside a Premier League stadium. He really wants to go to a game. He's hoping to go to a game one of these days and hopefully soon. And, he said that, otherwise, I mean, look, there's a lot of talk, right? We started this talking about the dimensions and, Ranger, he's not really thinking about that. It doesn't seem like he cares very much. He was asked about playing in front of potentially 60,000 people. That's what this stadium holds, a little over, I think it's 62. And he said, well, we play at Philly where they get 45 and it sounds like 60. So what's the difference, And seriously, he's unflappable, completely unflappable. Almost emotionless, even when it came to saying, I've never been to a Premier League stadium before. I'd really like to go to a game. Okay, great. So would I, and I'm not a soccer fan. So yeah, it's Ranger being Ranger, I suppose. He's pretty calm and even keeled.
The only time I was joking with him the other day, the only time I've seen him show emotion was when he was getting angry about a soccer game he was watching in the clubhouse. He was he got flustered, and it was very surprising for me to see given his on-field demeanor. But I guess that's what gets him going. So
I should have followed up by asking him what his favorite team is, because we're at the home of West Ham United, a team I know nothing about.
Yeah,
I'm sure he does, at least more than I do. But I mean, it's got to be neat. It's got to be neat. Imagine, I guess the equivalent of being a huge football fan at home and getting to play a baseball game at Lambeau Field, and probably not totally the equivalent, because London Stadium is not Lambeau Field. I don't think over here. It's only been around since 2012. There's not, the Olympics were here, but other than that, not a ton of history. So, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
And I would think that would get a lot of people fired up. The idea that they'd get a chance to play in a football stadium. If you were playing a game at the Link or something like that, a lot of people would be excited about that. And I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is. He's just not going to show it to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Taiwan Walker starting tomorrow. You mentioned the splitter. I talked to him I think it might've been last week. My sense of time is slipping away from me, but he mentioned that he was adjusting his grip on his splitter, in the hopes that it would help him command it a little bit better. I don't know if he talked about that today, but did he elaborate on where the splitter is at? Because it seems like that's the key for him, is figuring out that pitch.
Yeah, he feels a lot better about it than he did a while ago. I covered his second to last start was in San Francisco, and he gave up, I think, 5 or 6 hits on his splitter, which had been hit pretty hard even prior to that. It's atypical of him. It's a pitch he desperately needs to be effective in order for him to be effective. But the idea that, number one, he said, I'm going to throw a lot of them tomorrow because I got to keep the ball on the ground, especially here. And made a point of talking about how he feels like the pitch is better and coming along better than it was 2 starts ago, tells me that he is a lot more comfortable with it. So I think you were on to some things when you wrote that story about his grip and at least how he feels about the pitch. Now he needs to get results with it, and and that'll be really where the true test comes.
Well, it's funny because I talked to him before his start, the start that you covered, I believe, his last start. And I think that he started using the splitter in like the 4th or 5th inning in that start, like really leaning on it more.
Yep.
So I also wonder if there's a little bit of a trust factor here. Like he might be a little splitter shy because he was giving up a lot of hard contact on that pitch. It might need a little bit of he might need a little bit of a push to start using it again, which sounds ridiculous given how much of a weapon it was for him last year. But guys were 500 on pitch, so.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Like I said, in San Francisco, it was not an effective pitch for him. So it took 1 or 1.5 times through the lineup in his last start to really sort of, realize that, okay, I have a feel for it today. I trust it, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to lean on it. And there were some starts last year where he really leaned on it, and he leaned on it all year. I think he threw it a third of the time. But there were some starts where he threw it like 40% of the time or 45%. And it sounds to me like tomorrow could be one of those days for him where he really kind of leans heavy on the splitter. And if he doesn't have it, it's going to be a long day for him.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is the question that everyone's asking, but how much rope do you think they're going to give him here? How much, what do you think that they have to see from him for him to continue to pitch out of the rotation for the rest of the season?
My sense is it's still going to be a little bit of rope. They're in the unique position where they're playing from in front this year. They are the front runner with a big lead over the Braves, and they can do some things that they may not have been able to do last year and the year before, when really they had to put their foot on the pedal in June to get back into even the wild card race. And one of those things is they can give JT Realmuto a little bit more rest, which it sounds like they're going to do. Another thing is they could stick with a struggling player or a struggling pitcher maybe a little longer than they ordinarily would. And I think one of the things we know about Taijuan Walker is that he's a starter. He's here to log innings. He's here to be a number 5 starter and eat innings and do it at a league average-ish level. Right now, he's not doing it at a league average-ish level. He's doing it at a higher level than that, a worse level than that. So, but I do think that they're in a position where they can keep running him out there for a little while and to try to get him right. It's a regular season issue because, and I know Taijuan Walker doesn't want to hear this, but he's probably not going to pitch much in the postseason if everyone's healthy. Number 4 and 5 starters just don't pitch much. You lean on your top 3, and then you lean on your bullpen. And the way Christopher Sanchez is pitching, he's way ahead of him in the 4-5 race there. So what you want is Walker to just go out there and give you a competent start every 5th day. He doesn't have to dominate. He doesn't have to go on a run like he did last June for them when they were really getting back into it. So, I mean, it's my sense at least that I think that they can, and this way it enables them as well to kind of keep Spencer Turnbull healthy and available to them for as long as possible. Because they know they're going to need him in the rotation at some point as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I don't think he has much, if any, bullpen experience, Taijuan Walker. So
he's almost none.
So he's limiting himself, and Sanchez does. So if they wanted to use him in that role in the postseason, I'm sure it wouldn't be a huge jump for them to do that. Whereas with Taijuan Walker, he would have to get used to a different routine, and he'd have to get used to warming up quickly, and being used on short notice, which would be a big ask of him in the playoffs. So. Yeah, it's a tough spot for him. How upset he was about it last year. I was thinking when you were talking about how much, how their record gives them the ability to kind of do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Like, I feel like the same is true of Nick Castellanos and Rojas. Like, those guys get a little bit longer rope than they otherwise would, because winning cures all, and people aren't really focusing as much on that, I don't think.
It's true. And look, I wrote about this the other day. We are still 7 weeks out from the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And as you begin to think about, like, what do the Phillies go ahead and do? Like, how do you improve on the best roster in the National League? Do you stand pat? Do you look to improve? Look, one area where they could look to get better, frankly, is the outfield. And they were in this spot a year ago. They were very, very much looking at potential outfield acquisitions, whether it was, Adam Duvall or Randall Grichuk or Tommy Pham, or, they scouted all of those guys. And so you might say, like, well, look, at the end of the day, when the deadline rolled around, they decided to stick with what they had in the outfield, in part because they thought Yohan Rojas' defense would make them a better team. So you say, well, why would it be any different now than it was a year ago? And the only reason is that Nick Castellanos was hitting a year ago. He has not hit until this week a little bit. And so I do think, you're right. And it's true that they absolutely have the ability to kind of let these guys go a little bit and play before they make any decisions. But I do think in 6 weeks or so, if Castellanos is still not hitting, they might have to look to make an addition in the outfield, and it might have a trickle-down effect on Yohan Rojas, because you're not taking Castellanos out of the lineup, nor are you trading him. His contract doesn't really enable you to do that. So what would you do? You'd maybe go out and find center field help. It's a lot easier to have Rojas do his thing and bat ninth when Castellanos is hitting, and so is everyone else, than it is when he's not. So I think they were 23rd in outfield OPS, not great. So I think that they'll let those guys go a little bit, but I do think that they're going to come a point where they say, do we need to help the outfield, or are we good?
Yeah, no, definitely. It makes sense. You need more production from that spot, from those spots. Obviously, focusing on the specific trip, it's a long trip. It's a big time difference, and it's a big ask for a team in the middle of the regular season. A lot has been made about the impact of all the rest days on the pitchers, but I was wondering on the flip side, if you think that this trip could be somewhat of a benefit for the hitters, guys like Real Muto, as you mentioned, they're planning on giving him more rest. He's going to have 3 rest days heading into today's game. Do you think that the hitters could benefit at all from these 3 off days that they're going to get built in around this series?
For Real Muto, for sure. And not because of anything at the plate or anything like that, just from a physical, gets to rest his body standpoint. If anyone should have slept the last 2 days, it should have been him. I don't know if he's been out and about, but I've walked a ton here, and I'm I feel like I've had a workout. Hopefully he's taken it easy, because he has taken a beating here lately. And, it's one of the reasons why Rafael Marchand is the 27th man for this series, because if anything should happen, they want to make sure that they're covered. I do think for him, ordinarily I would tell you that no. I think when a team is hot, they want to just keep going, keep playing. But they didn't score a ton of runs, even though they swept the Brewers. They didn't score a ton of runs in that series, so it's not like they were all blazing hot. I don't think it's gonna hurt. I am curious, though. Because nothing has been able to slow them down so far. I do wonder whether in a regular schedule trips them up even a little bit. There's no definitive trend as far as the other 4 teams who've come over here, like how they've come out of London. Some were hot, some were not when they came out of London. There's been it's not like they've been universally cold or universally hot. So I am curious to see how it affects them at all. I will say they were very well prepared for this. They they got a lot of helpful advice from their strength and conditioning staff, from their team of analytics people, sleep doctors, sports science people who've all weighed in on how they should handle this.
They're not winging it.
Supposedly the hard part is over, right? Supposedly the US to UK part is the hard part. Now they'll leave here tomorrow right after the game. They'll get into Boston. Rob Thompson said it roughly 9:30 p.m. I'm trying to do the math in my head to see if that works out, but I've never been good at math or time zones. So I haven't figured that out yet, but they will get in. They will have mostly a normal night's sleep. I think the idea is don't sleep on the plane on the way back, because you want to have a normal night's sleep, and then they'll have an off day. So it should enable them to I guess get back on a regular time schedule and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. And then, with the pitchers, have they talked about how they plan to navigate all those rest days? Because there is a thing as too much rest. I mean, we've seen it with Wheeler. He doesn't like pitching on extra rest. But then you have guys like Nola who do prefer a few extra rest days. So I guess it kind of depends on the guy. But is that something that they're trying to, address at all?
Yeah, I think so. Zach Wheeler is someone I haven't had a chance to catch up with yet. Hoping to get to him tonight or tomorrow, because he in particular, right, does not love this, does not love the extra days. And in this case, there's nothing he could do about it, right? You can't fight the schedule or change it or anything like that. So I do think that he's going to have to adapt, and he will. But yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely irregular. Taijuan Walker mentioned he threw 2 bullpens this particular time around. I'm sure that Wheeler and Nola and Sanchez will all throw 2 bullpens because they're going extra time. So they'll prepare for that as well. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how they come out of it, because it's definitely different.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the bullpen guys specifically, because they haven't really been used that much, given how much the starters, or how deep starters are pitching into games. So I feel like they went into this series really needing work, and if they don't get a lot of work, then they have an extra off day. I mean, I don't know. What do you do? But
yeah, I mean, it's definitely unusual. It's kind of like having a second All-Star break. That's the only other time of the year that you get this time, and so as a result, they're going to have to maybe kind of lean on some of what they do at that time of year and apply it this time as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we will have answers to all these questions shortly when the team gets back into the States. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Inquirer Live at Gameday Central, sponsored by Xfinity. Be sure to stick around on Inquirer.com/Phillies Gameday to follow along with us as we live tweet throughout the game, post game-related news, and answer your comments and questions. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.